Hi guys, welcome back to Into the Light, a different life story, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan. Today is another day for a great interview. I've got Greg Cawley with me. Greg is coming from Australia to me, so just over the ditch. And I forgive him for that because he has been living in New Zealand for quite a bit. So he gets away from now and then to jumping across the ditch there. There's always this good banter between Aussies and Kiwis. So here you go, guys. But that's not why I've got Greg here on my show. Greg is the owner of BrikMan Yoga. And he has written a fantastic book, Real Men Do Downward Dog. And when I saw that initially, I thought, I need to read that book. And here you go. I did. It is an amazing book, guys. Trust me. So we'll talk a bit more about it. And I'm absolutely so pleased that I've got Greg today on my show. So welcome to my show, Greg.
Thank you, Stefan. I really appreciate you reaching out to me and reading my book, and looking forward to having a good chat.
And I'm so blessed and humbled because I read your book. So therefore, I actually know your story already. And I say that with a smirk because it's a story of trial and tribulation. And it is a story of transformation. And that is what attracted me so much to you. And especially your focus now on men's mental health. And that is something that we all need so much because we stupid buggers, we think we know it all. And we, especially sort of in New Zealand, we are pretty much, we seem to be relaxed, yet at the same token, we have the highest suicide rate in teens in the OECD. We are very driven. And unless you fit into that mold, it's very easy to feel like a failure. And so therefore today, this is mental health for the boys. Hey guys, well done for tuning in because this is for us. And this is the time to be open. And Greg started that in this journey in his book to open up, and it's amazing. But let's stop with the accolades and let's actually go straight to the money. So, Greg, when you were a young boy, did you run around, sit down in the lotus position, thought, was that your childhood?
Well, I never did that. And no, my childhood was, like get outside, go and play in the bush, go and catch some eels and, stay outside as long as you can and you'll get called home for dinner. That's kind of what we did. And we got injured and we got hurt and we learnt lessons and we learnt to be males, and that's what we did in those days and never thought twice about it. And it's a different world now.
And to a certain degree, that's actually quite nice. Free-ranging kids. I mean, there is nowadays many people who would grow up in Melbourne or Sydney or Berlin or London. They say this green stuff. What's that? That's a tree, darling. What's a tree? So your upbringing was very different. You were in nature. You were out there, but it was male oriented. Or let me rephrase that. Your culture was introducing a male role model or a male role rules, so to speak, into your upbringing, isn't it?
Yeah, and absolutely. And so doing all those boy stuff, and from that came the understanding that I was going to play a team sport of some kind or play sport, and that for me that was soccer. Which I played right through into my 30s. And, I think I started playing when I was about 5. I can't remember. But so soccer and athletics was my thing right through my younger ages to the end of my teens. I was running in the summer and soccer in the winter. And that's, none of us Netflix. I don't think we had TV till I was about 10 or 12. I can't remember that. I think I remember the first time that the TV was really something, well, colour TV anyway, was when the New Zealand Christchurch had the Commonwealth Games, which I think would have been 74. I'm not sure. I would have been 14 then.
So very sport oriented, and and you were quite good in sports, and so that was actually something for you. You actually went up to representative level, and you were out there. You're proving your mettle. You were a man's man, wasn't it?
Oh, I just love my sport, and I love being active, and I love the competition. And it's interesting. I've reflected on this a lot, and I think a lot of got a huge amount of self-esteem from sport, because particularly, I was lucky enough to be above average in my ability, and so I'd often get quite good accolades for how I performed on a football field. I might score a couple of goals, whatever it might be, and so that was really a source of my self-esteem, to be honest with you, was my sport. Yeah. I wasn't that great academically. Well, I was just a hard worker. Didn't love school much, but, I realized it was kind of one of those things you realize you just got to do this so you can have a chance. And also in my day, which, I sort of left school in the second part of the 70s, jobs weren't that hard to find. Leave school, get a good job, and just way you go, and it was not that, life wasn't that difficult really. It was pretty damn easy compared to what it is today, particularly for young men today. There's a huge amount of demands on their time and on their and distractions. I didn't have a lot of distraction. This was like the funnel I was going down: sport, school, job. That's it. There was none of this other stuff that the internet has created, this massive amount of information and diversity and information that we never had, good and bad.
Oh, so true, so true. It is one of my pet hates. You're quite right. But knowing your story, there were other distractions. And some of them were blonde, some of them brunette, some of them more. So whilst we're blaming the generation now for the internet, I think for you, you were quite successful, not just on the field, but also off the field. And suddenly this alcohol actually came into the game as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I had my moments. Yes. And that was actually the demise of my athletics career, funny enough. Alcohol and girls.
So maybe we shouldn't throw stones when we're sitting in the glass house.
True enough.
But that is what we do. That is what every young man does. So they are, every generation, going back to Plato and the other Greek and Roman big shots, they were complaining about their youth and how it's all going down the drain. So I think that is just a repeating story.
Yeah.
But you're true. So in your life, so basically, a great sportsman, really enjoying it, living it for it, and the self-esteem that's so beautiful, isn't it? You created an identity that sustained you around the field, and of course, I mean, being successful with the other gender. Oh, beautiful. So that is the other thing. So here you're feeding a certain masculine kind of role, and you're succeeding. And ultimately, very similar in my youth, it was the same. It was martial arts, 4 hours training a day. And then by 18, 19, university, girls, alcohol, and life changed. So I know exactly where you were. And maybe that was also for me as a parallel, maybe the time when I started losing myself, when I started sort of losing the focus. And I went with the flow. I went with the parties. I went with the girls. You had some amazing times. You ended up actually going first into accountancy and actually trying to make ends meet. So that is, that's as good a job as any. And then of course, you had the opportunity to go to a nice tropical island for a year, get a job in, what was it, Barclays Bank, in... Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so on my 21st birthday, actually, I've been working in chartered accountancy for a year after finishing part of my studies. And then my brother had moved up to Nauru, which is the phosphate island, dead on the equator, straight up from New Zealand, 30 miles south of the equator. It's about 8 miles around. And at that time, Nauru was the richest country in the world per capita because of its phosphate. And if you can imagine that, I think about that now and compare it to the likes of Saudi Arabia, which probably is, or the Emirates, which are very wealthy. And you go, whoa, that's amazing. But they were making mountains of money, and they used to get expats up there to administration, etc. And I went up to visit my brother I left New Zealand on my 21st birthday, and just had a whale of a time. Cheap alcohol was almost free. Lots of girls. It was hot. It was just fun, And I spent about 3 weeks there, and I thought this is pretty good. And then one day at a barbecue just before I left, the guy who was running the local tax haven, because it was a tax haven at the time, for Barclays Bank, we started talking, and I told him what I did, and he said, "Well, we're looking for someone like you right now." I said, "We have a chat." Okay. So the agreement was made, and I went back to New Zealand 2 days later, quit my job the next day, and 2 weeks later I was back in Nauru for 2 years, supposedly. Only ended up being a year, but wow, it was pretty amazing year for a young man. I had a great time, honestly. I don't think I didn't learn much, or I learned something really hard. I did learn a lot, actually, but it was kind of just a huge party year, and I loved it. Now, I always say it was the best year of my life, and it was in a lot of ways. But I'm glad it ended after a year, because 2 years would have been pretty full on.
1987 for me, Heidelberg, and then a trip through Europe that lasted 3 months. Yes, so I know what you're talking about. And the best year of my life? Exactly.
Brilliant.
So, and it's so beautiful that we had the chance to live that at the time when there were no cell phones around with cameras.
Yes.
Children, don't try that now. Cool. But and then obviously sort of, you came home with 2 seats, you in one seat, your liver on the other side. In the second seat, because that would have been an interesting one. But then you actually started getting a bit more serious, and down the line, I jump a little bit in your story, because you actually became more entrepreneurial. You actually ultimately ended up being a businessman, owning a garage door business to start off with, and then you thought Windows. Hey, let's take on Windows, and so you were actually throwing yourself in there, weren't you? You were actually really now also applying the same principles that you have learned in your life, going all out and throwing yourself into the business and getting the disease of being self-employed.
Yeah, that's an interesting journey into that, because I mentioned in the book that my dad was a public servant, and the narrative for myself and my brother and my sister was just go and get a good job and rise your way up to the top, and that's how you go. My wife, who I'd met, had been her father had owned his own business, and so she had this idea in her mind that she was always going to become self-employed, and that kind of morphed. Over time, the opportunity came to buy our own business, which was the garage door business in Tauranga, and I thought, okay, I think I was 30 at the time, and so we just took it on. I was working in Australia at the time, and we decided to, seems to be a bit of a theme in this, doing things off the cuff. But anyway, we flew back to New Zealand for a weekend to look at the business and think about it, because my ex-wife's dad had found the business for us. And, basically I had 2 questions. Can I do it? and how much money is he going to make. That's all I cared about, and he was very strong in his affirmation that, yes, you've absolutely got the ability to do this, and was going to make X amount of money, which was fine. And so, okay. So back to Australia, resigned the next day. 2 weeks later, I was in there owning a garage door business, about which I knew absolutely bloody nothing. And it was very humbling, because having been an accountant and dealing with clients and giving them advice on what to do, I found out within about 2 hours that, I didn't have a clue. Like the realities of owning your own business, like the little things that you have to do which get in the way of the ability to have a good structure, they're just 2 light years apart, Anyway, so that was my journey into owning a garage door business, and that was a great move. And it was tough, and it was difficult, and I learned a lot, and we became really successful because I just applied a lot of principles that I've learned actually through my football, funnily enough. Because shall I just recap that football thing? So, when I was playing football, I played in a team that was we were really successful. We were all ex-first team players who'd been kicked out of the first team because my club had brought over a whole lot of English semi-pros. So all the local first team boys ended up in the reserves, and we just cleaned up. But we had a very strong culture of no prisoners. And we were arguing, we were winning 10-0 and having an arguing. And, I was a centre forward. So, every mistake I ever made was glaringly obvious because the ball would miss the goal. And we would just argue, and even in the change rooms afterwards, we would be in each other. You did this, you weren't good enough. And over beer, there'd be banter. And it really, I kind of cognitively made the connection that success equals that kind of behavior. And I ran my business like that. And I was a bastard, honestly. And I look back at my poor employees at times and how I acted towards them, and the aggression that I ran with, because I was like I was going to win at all costs. And my opposition, I was very confrontational with my opposition. I'd go in for a fight with them, and which never, over time, it was totally counterproductive. Because no one wins a war. We'll have price wars with these guys, and no one won. The prices just came down. We all lost a bit of money and maybe a bit of market share, and no one won. So I kind of learned, and it took me till I was out of my businesses and did some courses to understand that's how I'd been operating. And I was operating that way in my marriage as well. So that whole super aggressive, unforgiving behavior, while it might have been very successful in my business, as far as bottom line was concerned, it was not successful in regards to culture. It certainly wasn't successful in regards to my marriage. And even when I learned that stuff, actually, when I sort of came to my realization that that's actually how I'd operated, I actually went to my ex-wife and apologized to her. I said, I've learned some stuff about how I've had been operating, and I had no idea, but this is why, and this is, so my sporting culture had created my life culture. And while that can sometimes be good, if you've got a really good culture, it can also be very destructive. And I'm very interested to know at some point, if I ever get to speak to any of my old teammates, how they felt, if they ever get to read my book, how they might feel about what I'm saying. Whether they feel the same, or I don't know. I'm very fascinated to find out one day.
I think there's only so much toxic masculinity that you can handle, both as a woman living with someone like you, as well as you yourself, because it's a very destructive way of living. It's very aggressive. It's very, there's fight and flight constantly. And that leaves a toll. That leaves a very big disaster waiting to happen. And it is what happened to you, happened to your marriage, what happens to your success in your business, all these kind of things. We become counterproductive in our aggression, and we become mean bastards who just are not nice to be around.
Mm.
And I don't think I was so different. For me, there was a lot of anger and resentment down the line. In actual fact, these were the two emotions that really described me best for probably 5 years in my life. And I don't think I was a great dad. I don't think I was a great husband. I'm not sure how well I was masquerading it at work. I was certainly very different. I was different then than I am now by, light and day and night. And sometimes we just need to be there. And sometimes the universe pushes us into these areas. And luckily, many of us come to a point where they actually realize enough is enough of that, or we can't continue like that. How did that come about with you? Where was this catalyst appearing?
Oh, the realization?
So, I mean, you were basically, you were living in a very dark place at one stage in your life. What happened then?
Yeah, so what happened was that is global financial crisis. Prior to that, the marriage wasn't in great shape. I think I'd been married for 22 years at that point. Had 2 children, 14 and 12, son and daughter. And DFC, the business started to tank. Because what I'd done, I'd grown the business. I'd grown to 3 different prongs of my business. So I employed up to 32 people at one stage. Had a lot of intermediate managers, which I learned too late that I'm not good at operating through managers. I'm a very good hands-on operator where I can influence stuff with my own power, if you like. But through managers, not good. And so the thing got out of control, and then the GFC hit, and then the chickens all started coming home to roost. And at the same time, marriage tanking, so really dark place, pretty close, I think, to losing everything. And then I we'll go back to the yoga thing, but after that event, I went on a course after my marriage had broken up and all the rest of it happened. I went on a course of personal development, which really looked at the structure of how you think and what shapes your thinking, etc. NLP, but like NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And I just came to all these realizations of over time of how I'd been operating, some of why I'd been operating, and did you really want to keep operating like that? No. And do you really want to still be in your business? No. Kind of very humbling moments where I kind of realized, well, this was not good. I need to go in a different direction. And I'd already started on that direction because I ended up going to Nepal right in the middle of this crisis. A great friend of mine, well, he was actually an acquaintance at the time, and I call him a great friend because of what he's done for me. We don't see a lot, we don't have any communication anymore, but he just walked into my office one day when I was in a complete and utter mess, and hidden the hand. And he walked in just to say good day. I hadn't seen him for 3, 4, 5 years. He walked in, and I'm my head in my hands. We're buggered. I don't know what to do. I've done everything I can. I don't know how to turn this thing around. And he just said, "You have to go there's a course in Nepal. You have to go on this course. You're at a crossroads of your life. I can see that clearly. You need to go." So, yeah, fine. Thank you, mate. That was a great idea. I've got no money. My wife's nearly not hardly talking to me. I go, how the hell am I going to tell my wife that I'm going to bugger off to Nepal for 2 weeks? And by the way, you're going to have to come and work while I'm in Nepal. Anyway, he pursued me. I told him, he pursued me for a month and would ring me every couple of days saying, you got to go. No, I can't go. Making all the excuses, money mainly. And then he wore me down. And what happened was he had talked to the lady who ran the course, and she had agreed to basically give me the course for almost nothing, which was very, very generous. And he just rang me up today and said, I've solved your money problem. It's not going to cost you anything except for some airfares. And I went, because I've been to Nepal about 5 years before. I loved it. So the Nepal was a big pull for me to go back. Anyway, I just went, okay. And I thought, now I've got to tell Andrea I'm going to Nepal. So it happened. And in Nepal, unbeknownst to me, every morning, yoga. Never been on my radar at all. And we were doing yoga up on the roof in Kathmandu with all the smells and sounds and the cool breeze from the mountains. And then we would do it we'd just for a little trek up in the Annapurnas, and we'd be sitting under these 8,000 meter peaks with the clouds rolling in on a mat. And it's just amazing. And it was really hard for me, very hard physically, and for me to shut my brain up because I was a constant chatter. And I remember I walked into the room where this course was. There was about 800 people, and I just felt like fish out of water because I was miserable. And, I could barely raise a smile, or my self-confidence was zero, marriage failure, business, or where my self-esteem came from a business. So that was zilch. That had gone down the toilet. And then did yoga for every day. And it was just, I love the physicality because I'm very physical. And I like the fact that I found it really hard. And but then Zoe, who ran the course, just said to me one day, because she did some one-on-one coaching. She's an amazing lady. She just said to me, "You're just observing. You're not participating. If you're sitting behind your eyes, there's someone behind your eyes looking out but not doing anything." And she told me a few other things, home truths, like it was like someone hit me with a bat. You go, whoa, what was that? And it was, I can remember it like my body physically moved but didn't move. It felt like I was hit. Anyway, long story short, yoga for 10 days, back home to New Zealand, made decisions about how I was going to get out of this business operation. Part of my business was tanking. So, and I hated it. I didn't understand it. And if you can't understand the business, you sure as hell can't run it. So, and that was really taking everything else down the toilet with it. So it was decided to just cut the losses and get rid of that. And someone said, kill the pig. It was the pig, and I had to kill it to move on. And so we killed the pig. And, in my mind, being a battler and like, I'm going to fight this thing, to actually cut losses is really foreign. But oh my God, wasn't it the best thing that ever happened to me? Because that pig died and things started to just slowly come back out again. And if I hadn't have killed that pig, it would have taken me, and it certainly would have run the businesses. So it was a very humbling lesson to know when to give up, particularly someone who's so success oriented as I am and certainly was. That answers the question.
Oh, hell yes. And I feel for you, and I can feel the anger. I can feel exactly where you were at, and you basically sold it for a dime. You sold it just at the stock and basically what the venue was worth, and that was about it. But it is so nice when you actually read the book. I felt this big load coming off your shoulders, and I think that is so beautiful. I ran a large pain business, or I was a pain physician, and I ran pain clinics around New Zealand, and it is the job ate me up, and I invested far too much of my own emotions into the business, into my patients, I took on far too much of transference of their emotions, of the kind of bullying and the bad things that happened in around that time, affecting some of my patients. And it killed me, and it really put me to the brink, where I then ended up in rehab. And as part of me remaining or getting back into being a good doctor, I agreed to stop pain medicine. And this was one of the hardest things I've ever done, because I had identified myself so much for it. And like you, I was a fighter. Fight. And suddenly I had to stop that. And suddenly there was this void. There was this emptiness. Was there an emptiness for you? Or was that actually pure bliss and relief?
Well, when I came back from Nepal, I had the plan. The plan was, my marriage was in really bad shape too, but I had to kill that pig first, and that took a year until that business sold.
Right.
And then it was apparent from the time in Nepal to the sale of the business that the marriage wasn't going to go anywhere. So, and prior to that, as a lot of people were in that GFC in marriages which were toast, they had to stay together because they couldn't afford to part. And so Andrea and I stayed together because I couldn't afford to move out. And so 3 months after the business sold, because I still had my main business, which is actually pretty profitable, I left. I moved out of the house and left my kids, and it was pretty traumatic, but it was time, and it was the best thing that I could have done for everybody, including my kids and including my ex-wife. And my kids used to come around and see me and say, "Dad, it's so much better that you're not here." And I never took that personally as being a horrible thing. I just took that as being a positive thing, because we've sold that negative energy that you poor buggers have lived with for far too long. And you talk about, I have regrets about how I parented. But you still have an opportunity, no matter what's happened in the past, to make things better. And now most of my kids live in Australia. They're all within 2 hours of me. I'm going to see my daughter in a couple of hours. She lives in Brisbane, and we have a great relationship with my children. So so might have been a bit of a prick of a dad and not given them the time or attention that I definitely should have. But I've got an opportunity now to make things better, and by supporting them, being with them, having time with them, and getting to know them as people. So it's really good. I'm starting to rant there.
No. This is not ranting, because you're speaking out of my soul. It's spooky that you came up with that, because I was about to ask you that. I wasn't there for my children, and certainly my youngest son is quite outspoken about that in his own right was a trauma to him, and that is something that he is dealing with now. And I must say, it hurts. As a parent, I love this young man. I love both of my sons to bits. I would give my life for them. And to have the mirror held in front of my face, and having to realize that I was far less than the dad that I would have loved to be, with hindsight, is hard. It is hard. So it's interesting that you were able to focus on the now and focus on the future, and say, and let me ask you, have your children forgiven you, or was it in fact actually never an issue for them?
We have had discussions, particularly with my son. He's forgiven me. I mean, he and I have been on a big journey together, my son, since he was 17. That course that I mentioned that I went on, I recognised that was something that he should do, and I bribed him, actually. I bribed him to go on the course, and he went kicking and screaming. And at 17, Yeah. And he nearly walked out after a day, but luckily he stuck it.
Excellent.
And it transformed him. It made him, because he at the time was 17, 18, he was starting to work on fishing boats. So making really big money for a young man working out of Tauranga. Go away for sea for 2 weeks at a time, might come back with a mountain of cash, might come back with nothing if they don't catch anything. But generally they did. And then they, sailors home from the sea, they go crazy. Alcohol, girls, drugs. So he was going down that really bad track. And so I got him on the course, and he still maintained that bad trajectory for a little while, but he kind of woke up to who he was and what he was doing and why. And maybe part of the trauma of living in the house between my wife and I was a big problem for him, and why he started going down the track. I'm not sure about that. So we went to the US 3 times together to do extra courses, and we got to know each other really well. And he lived with me for like 2 years in New Zealand before I moved to Australia, and when he moved to Aussie, he came and lived with us for 18 months. That was way too long, by the way. It should have only been 6 months, but we had to kick him out in the end. We have a great relationship. He lives on the Gold Coast. He's an exceptionally successful real estate agent now at 26. His goal is to be number 1 agent on the coast, and he's going to be. He's not far off it now. He's come from a drugged out fisherman to an extremely successful, driven, hungry real estate agent, doing an amazing job. And my daughter's living in Brisbane, and with her partner. They moved out for 2 years. They moved in with us for 3 months when they came. And I thought I had great pain when I first moved, because there was you don't know what's said, by the other party. But, I felt that I was losing my daughter when I left, because her contact levels with me were very minimal. When it would come to my weekend that she'd come and stay, often she'd go and stay with friends, and it kind of suited me a little bit. But, because I like my own space. But yeah, I really was worried that I was losing her for a long time. And someone gave me some great advice. Just let them go, stay constant, just maintain the story, maintain your stability with them, and eventually they'll come back. And it's happened. She's went to uni in Otago, got a degree, and over the last 5 years, we've got to know each other really well, and it's worked out really nicely. So I'm very grateful. Both my kids are very close to me, which and it's really hard on their mum, who's still in Tauranga. She hadn't seen them for 2 years because of this bloody COVID nonsense. So I'm very grateful for that. That's for sure.
That's beautiful. But I guess the reason that they have come back is because you remained the constant, you remained that boulder, and the reason you were able to remain in that strong position is because you started to look after yourself. You started to work on yourself with going to the United States, going to do courses, to learn about yourself. And every single step you took from then on was actually focused towards becoming the new you. And that was the amazing journey that you sort of can pick up in your book and feel from you now. I mean, the sheer fact that how honestly you can talk about a quite dark part of you in the past, a dark version of you. And now to be there and actually giving men hope through yoga, through a way out. I mean, what a transformation. What a story. What a change. So, but that change happened because you actually invested in yourself. You invested and you were open to change. You knew it could not continue like that. And I guess that's the same for many people who are listening to that show. I hope so. Unless, of course, it's those that I've bribed and that I've changed to the chair with their eyes kept open. You watch my show now. No, it rarely happens. Only in my household with my children, under duress. But the reality is that you guys are here because you feel that your life is at a point where you actually want to change. And especially for us men, it's really, really hard to find vehicles with which to implement that change. And I think for you, Greg, you have just gone down that route, and naturally you have started to open up, and down the line you had a new relationship, and your new partner was actually was encouraging you to go out there and to find the new you, and to actually create BrikMan Yoga. And how beautiful is that? So how was your how did you feel the first time that you actually did a yoga lesson? Not just with you trying to somehow get yourself in a pretzel, but actually now get yourself in a pretzel in front of other people and trying to get them into pretzels. How did that go?
Yeah, well, that was interesting because I started after I did my yoga teacher training. I just started with a couple of friends in a room twice a week. They'd come in and I just practice, and very self-conscious, as you can imagine. But I'm kind of blessed that I'm quite a degree of self-confidence, and yeah, probably self-confidence, I think. So being up in front of people never really been a concern. I've kind of always been in leadership positions through my life. I was football captain. I was, owned businesses, so leading people, and talking publicly, etc. So that wasn't hard. What the hard thing is to get over yourself, right? And I still struggle with this sometimes. It's in yoga, particularly when you're shaped like me and as flexible as I am, there's a tendency to really compare yourself to someone else. I mean, I'll be in a class, in a pose, and there'll be three guys in that class doing it way better than me. And you sort of go, whoa. And what am I doing wrong? But, the realization is, well, actually, my body just can't do that. I'm 60 years old. I'm not flexible as I should be. I've neglected my body forever. And now do you think you can do that? No. So it's actually about getting over yourself and just being who you are. And I think the feedback I get is that's one of the reasons that people like coming to my classes, because it creates a reality for them. Like, if that guy can do it, I can do it. Which was really why, and it was Michelle, my partner, who said to me right from the time she met me and found out I was into yoga, she said, you should start doing yoga, because I was looking for a new life. She said, you should become a yoga teacher and do it for men. It was beyond my comprehension at that time. And over the course of the next 2 years, when I sold my businesses and moved here to Toowoomba, I just did nothing. I actually did nothing for like 9 months. It was just amazing. I sat on my ass. I walked down to the local deli, read the paper, have 3 cups of coffee, talk to the locals, get to know people. And that was just a blessing. And you think about it, how many blokes get the opportunity at 55 to just drop out and chill out, let their brains, like their brains decompress. I call it decompressing. And I decompress, and then slowly you can start seeing things a little clearer and try a few things. Like I did that you alluded to it earlier, that meditation retreat for 10 days for Vipassana, which was mind-blowing and very, very difficult. No talking for 10 days. Meditate for like 12 hours a day, or try to. But that meditation retreat, at that point I was formulating, maybe I could become a yoga teacher. But, I couldn't get over my own persona, and, I'm a businessman, and how can I teach yoga to men? Because I had so many objections, I had to get out of my own way, and that retreat cleared everything away. I walked out of there knowing that this is what I'm going to do. And then, because I came home, I said, right, when's the next teacher training? And that was it. the retreat had managed to clear away all my objections and personal images and all that stuff. And I went, yeah, let's do this. So yeah, pretty weird, pretty amazing actually if I reflect. And then the other challenge, of course, I had, I'm teaching yoga to blokes in a country town in Australia. So we're like 130 k's out of Brisbane west, on top of the dividing range. It's a big inland. So it's about the same size as Tauranga, Toowoomba, but it's a rural town growing up into a city. And so I'm getting all these Aussie blokes trying to convince them that yoga is a good idea. Well, it's been a hard yards for a while. I mean, the momentum is starting to roll now, and it's bloody great, and it's very gratifying when you see people's advancement. They walk in a certain manner, and they're all walking and going, "Oh, I'm not sure I really want to be here." And then they suddenly realise that everyone in the class is like them. We all got injuries. We're all varied ages from 40 plus to 70. And we just do the best we can. We have a few laughs, and very gratifying. And yoga creates, and this is one of the things that you do as well, I gather, is that one of your passions is yoga creates a space where people can become vulnerable. As much as it's not just lying around doing funny moves with your body. It's a very opening up process of yourself. And there's been numerous occasions where someone walked up to me after a class saying, "Can I talk to you?" And, they might have tears, they might be, like going through marriage breakups or whatever it might be. And it's become a catalyst, a space where they feel safe. But they all know my story. I'm open with my story. And particularly now having the book, they've all read it. Most of them have. If they haven't, I'll find out who they are and make sure they do. So they feel safe, and that's one of the great things. And we're creating a lovely community of blokes. And we're not being yogis, and we'll go out for a beer on a Friday. Every 4 Fridays we have what I call yogi beers, where we all go down to the Lycra pub and have a few beers and a chat. It's been a journey.
If you look at what people really want, it's connection. If you boil it down to what is missing in many lives is a purpose and a connection with others who are on the same path. And whilst you are in a rugby club, or in your case, a soccer club, you had the toxic masculinity being actually quite a toxic environment in which you guys were bathing yourself constantly in there. Suddenly here you have got an environment in which you go through some stretching exercises so that if there's the physical release of tension. And then with that physical release of tension, you have got suddenly also an environment that fosters you being yourself. And that is something we men are not used to. We are constantly putting up that persona, that mask of being completely in control, being the best, being the coolest, being the kind of stressful, absolutely stressful. But we live it, and we adhere to it because it has been so etched into us. It has been so hardwired in us that we are talking here 50,000 years of evolution, that kind of hardwired. And then our social circumstances, where it's still certainly in your setting, it was the classic thing. Boys don't cry, all these kind of things. That is how we were brought up. So to now suddenly say, I actually step into that yoga class, or I go out there and have a similar experience, that is so powerful and so beautiful. And for that, I thank you that you have opened up that space for a man to be man, to actually finally be real men, those men that actually can admit that they're pricks and that they're idiots and that they are not perfect and that they are full of shit sometimes. I mean, just bullshit in order to keep the mask up, and it's fuck off. It's just, it is, and that's the really nice thing. I see that in some other sports that I do here, or not sports, ways of coming together and focusing out there. And it's beautiful when that happens. I try to do that in my job. I try to have that openness, to foster that level of, we can be ourselves, and you don't have to bullshit me every single day that everything is fine. On the contrary, that and that's beautiful. So if we can just start sowing that seed and actually getting it into, especially men, that it's okay not to be okay. My goodness, would that world not be a much, much nicer place? And would that not be so beautiful? And
I had no idea that would be an outcome of what I'm doing. But one thing about a yoga mat is a very simple little oblong piece of rubber. You can't be anything but yourself on that mat.
I like it.
There's a lot of self-acceptance. You have to go through the struggle and trying to do stuff that you can't do, and trying to push yourself too hard, or comparing yourself to the guy next to you or in front of you. You can't. There's a point at time where you come to accept, this is me, and I'm just going to do the best I can. And it's one of the strong messages I have with these dudes is when they walk in, don't take notice of the guy in front of you. You just do your own practice. If you've got to sit down and put your head on your knees, do it. I don't care. No one here cares. Just do look after yourself. And so the great degree of self-acceptance in yoga, and as I said in the book, there's a little saying I love, which is yoga helps you to learn the consequences of being yourself. So, you're on a yoga mat, and which could mean physically, it could mean, mentally, you get really shitty in a particular pose because you don't like it. And I'm going to hold it. That teacher at the front's going to hold that pose for a long time. I hate this pose. And it's not until you get to the point where you go, okay, it's a pose. I'm going to go through the process. It is going to end, and we'll be good. Which is really a Buddhist thing, if you like, about attachment. You get attached to an outcome, and the Buddhists will tell you that attachment creates misery. So if you look at a yoga perspective, you have a pose you hate. I used to have a pose like this called lizard pose. I hated it with a passion. And every time I go into it, I'm like face screwed up, and Christ, when's this going to finish? And I just battle it the whole time. And it wasn't until I let go of, yes, it is going to end. I just got to breathe through this. It's going to end. And I'll do my best. And it does end. And once you get to that point, I actually quite like that pose now. So you've got to let yourself, let all this stuff go and understand who you are. And, who would have believed a little thing like doing yoga would create so many different avenues of transformation and thought. It's crazy. Just crazy.
It's beautiful, isn't it? And it's crazy. It's these kind of little realizations where you go through something like that, and then you think, oh, that's actually a cool lesson. And without you knowing it, you start using the same, maybe for an anxiety attack or a really stressful situation. And suddenly, instead of getting really, really angry about it, it's coming like a wave, and it will wash over you if you like it or not. But you might as well accept it that this wave is coming, like in the ocean. That wave is coming. Yep, you can shout at it, but nah, the wave doesn't care. So it's the same there. And it's that kind of flow and effect. And that is what you're opening up with little lessons like that. So it's beautiful. So you become the catalyst. You become the merchant of hope, so to speak. You are sowing those seeds, and that's a very, very beautiful position to be in, isn't it, Greg? You are.
I absolutely love what I do in regards to the way that I can make a difference to people, and have seen major transformations of people, physically, mentally, emotionally. It's, you know, I mean, mate, I'm not perfect. I still have my own struggles. And, you know, sometimes my own lessons are hard for me to remember. You know what I mean? Like with some of the things I'm reading, I wrote in the book, and then something will be going on. I'll go, oh, Christ, you're not even listening to yourself, you know? So it's a constant, you got to constantly keep working at this stuff. You know, I don't live like Buddha. Just because I sit on a yoga mat and tell guys how to do yoga, I'm a normal dude. I drink, I love beer, I like a scotch. I have arguments, I have relationship problems, all that stuff. But, and I'm far from perfect, but I can tell you that without the process I've gone through, my life and how I operate now would be vastly different, and, you know, and not have as good a results, if you like, as I do. And they're not all perfect. You know, I don't always have wins. Don't worry about that.
And that's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I think I would like to touch upon one more thing and emphasize one beautiful little snippet out of your journey. When you were in really dark times, you had this guy, acquaintance, walk in after not seeing you for a few years and saying, hey, mate, how are you doing? And by the way, here is this opportunity. I think you need a break. You're on the crossroads. If you think back of all the encounters that you had, that was probably one of the key encounters there, where someone actually checked in on you and saw where you were at. And again, it's that the power of human connection, that someone is actually just picking up the phone, or in this case, walking in and unannounced and said, hey, how are you doing? Let's have a coffee, kind of a thing. And I think that is something that can be so powerful, that can be so beautiful, that can make the difference between literally life and death, because you were in very dark places. And you yourself said you were actually not far off really crashing and burning. And for all we know, this guy might have actually literally saved your life. And it's probably not too much a stretch of imagination.
No.
And certainly, the same applies in my life. So I think I want to encourage you guys out there, anyone who's listening. We're all going through strange times with COVID, with other financial instabilities, with other disasters, climate change. All those things can have direct impacts. And you don't know where someone is that around you, where they are on their journey. And I think it's just sometimes so nice to just say, hey, are you all right? And actually listen what comes back, and actually truly meaning, are you all right? Shall we have a coffee? That little phone call, that little smile that you send someone might be the candle in the darkness that they need. And so I want to so emphasize that. Go out there, guys. Yes, it's a shit world at the moment, but at the same token, we can make a difference. I'm trying to make a difference with my show here. Greg makes a difference with his yoga courses by opening up his way of living to real men who now do yoga poses. Hey, so this is cool. This is cool. Why not you guys out there be the spark, the candle in someone else's darkness? So if we can all do a little few things like that, I'm sure we can make this world a better place. And let's do that together. And let's, and guys, if you happened to be somewhere on the East Coast of Australia and you actually want to check in with Greg, tell us where you are. And more importantly, tell us more about your book so that people can find out more about you.
Thank you. Yes, I will. And just going back to that point you made about Graham walking to that office that day, was that divine intervention? I don't know. Do I believe in that stuff? I'm not sure. But it was uncanny, and he did change my life. He said to me, you're at a turning point. And he was right. And I could have gone either way. And I was definitely within 2 or 3 months of a breakdown had I not gone to Nepal. So, yeah, you're right. And it's one thing that I certainly try and do. If I see any things of my guys struggling and I can tell, generally, I'll reach out to them, and have reached out and had coffees with many of my guys and had just had personal conversations. So you're right. Where am I? Toowoomba, the thriving metropolis of Toowoomba. So if you're in Brisbane and you go straight west on the motorway, and where you come to the Great Dividing Range and you go straight up nearly 1,000 metres, 1,000 feet. We're on the top of the escarpment. So the temperature drops 3 degrees when you come up to my place. It's crazy. It's hot down in Brisbane. It's be cold in Toowoomba. It gets to 0 here. It's cold here at the moment. So at Toowoomba, I have my classes, 6 classes a week. And I do some online stuff as well. I do actually have an introduction to men's yoga course that you can get online. So my website is www.gregcawleyyoga.com.au or www.BrikMan which is BRIKMAN yoga.com.au. And there's an online course you can do, which will give you 4 hours pretty much of introduction to yoga. That would be worth doing for guys maybe thinking about that. My book, that's another weird thing. I never thought in the world I'd become an author. But I got involved with this company in regards to profile and stuff. And they said, for credibility, you must write a book. And I wrote this thing twice, actually. I wrote it once under my own volition. And then I decided to talk to somebody, an expert, and they said, great book, rewrite it. It took me 9 months to write first time and 6 weeks to write the second time. And this is it here. Real men do downward dog. I'm just back to front, of course. But so there's the Brik trying to do a downward facing dog. And the book is really just for men to read so they can think that or realize that yoga is not something mystical that bendy females only can do. It's something I can do, as part of my fitness wellness ongoing. And like I detail my story because it's got a lot of reference in there, which I think a lot of men will relate to, particularly guys at 40 plus, when we all start going through that pressure, kids, career, money, marriage, all that stuff. When things start lumping on top of us, this to me, this yoga stuff is a great way to help even that out and create a good base to go forward with. So I also talk about what I believe difficulties men face at 40 in regards to family and balancing stuff, why we don't want to go to yoga while we should, a bit of history about the practice. And it's been an interesting journey, and I'm pretty proud of what's come out of it. And love you to get it on Amazon. I think Amazon is a major place to buy it, or most of the major online bookstores. So real men do downward dog. Who would have believed that? It's about as believable as me becoming a yoga teacher, to be honest.
In all fairness, I have to say this is I try to read all the books of all my guests, and sometimes it's just such a flurry of activity I don't get around to it. And so it was nearly the same with Greg. So I made a point of this morning really starting to read his book. And I couldn't put the bloody thing down. And I was getting annoyed. Shit, it's coming to interview time. No, come on. I want to read more. So it is absolutely, it's lovely. And that shows, because certainly middle-aged male, doing all the stupid things that we did in our youth and having some of the scars to prove it. And in your case, the injuries, and I'm finding myself turning more into a brick. That is us. That is men. That is being stupid when we were young and bulletproof and full of testosterone. And unfortunately, we are now paying the price for it. But guys, the past does not equal the bloody future. Okay. Only because we have lived 30 years, 40 years, 50 years of maybe a life that, with hindsight, that doesn't mean to say that you cannot turn your life around. That doesn't mean to say that suddenly you cannot make this break turn a bit more flexible and a bit more, you won't do the splits tomorrow, but hey, you might actually feel so much better afterwards. So, and not after doing the splits tomorrow. You will not feel better. Don't try that at home.
don't try that at home.
No, it doesn't end pretty. But you will be amazed about the progress, as with everything. In learning to love yourself, it's a very painful story, inevitably a painful path that you choose. But if you start actually addressing some of the things in your life, you will be a better man. There's no two ways around it. It is, and yoga and meditation and actually getting off the hamster wheel and actually just stopping and actually thinking about yourself can be one of the most powerful and beautiful things you will ever do in your life. Doesn't matter who you are, what you have done, what you have created, what you have achieved. I don't care how many millions you've got. I don't care how many houses you have got if you're a property investor. I don't care. The moment you start tackling the demons in there and the dark spots in there and the dark memories and the dark experiences, the negative emotions, that's when you really become a man. And that's powerful. And I think Greg has got the ability to guide you there. And I so hope that you will go to places that you need to go to spread your message out there, because the message is so needed. We men need to hear it, that there is hope and that we can expect to get our shit sorted if we put the time in, if you put the work in, and if you start finally loving the true us in there, not that fucking persona that we put up in for everyone else to see, which is so fake it makes me cringe. And that applies, I'm talking about myself here, okay? But let me guess, you will probably recognize yourself a little bit there too. Greg, thank you so much for sharing all those quite painful memories and where you had been. But it's so fantastic to see where you are going and this path. And I want to see, well, I would love to look into the future, what happens to Greg in the next year, because once you've started such a journey of transformation, you don't stop. It's not just, oh, great, that's it now. Hey, cool, I don't know, that's me now. No, you've learned, wow, you can change. So any ideas? Do you want to give us a sneak preview of the new Greg to be?
Yeah, well, in the next 12 months, or probably the next 6 months, I want to start taking started building BrikMan Yoga either on the Gold Coast or in Brisbane. I'm trying to determine where the best market is for me.
Yeah.
And because I have 2 or 3 of my students are actually becoming teachers now, which is
cool.
Awesome.
Cool.
And so they're following my path. Yeah. So then I can effectively, I'm creating some layers, because at the moment I'm the only one that can do it. I'm the only male yoga teacher in Toowoomba. But like, if you've seen that program, Little Britain.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like the only gay in the village,
Shit.
That's how I can. So once I've got these guys in place, they'll sort of come up under me and start taking some of my classes, when I can start reaching a field. But my main focus is actually to start speaking publicly.
Nice.
And I'm doing some work on that at the moment. Part of the reason for the podcasts as well is to raise profile and start talking to groups and maybe conferences, and that's pub. So becoming a speaker is really where I want to go, because I think the message is relevant now and in 10 years. And it's relevant to every bloke. We're all going through our shit, and and a lot of us have got no idea how to get out of it. No idea whatsoever. And had that man not walked in my office that day, I probably would. I doubt I'd be here today, to be quite honest with you. So, transformational, amazing. And and had I not discovered yoga as a result, accordingly, I certainly don't think I'd have been in the same mental, physical. I wouldn't be in the same. It wouldn't be good physically, because I was drinking a lot. I still like drinking, but I can't drink much because my body won't let me anymore. I've got a job to do. No good doing yoga, teaching yoga with a hangover is no fun.
But then again, why do we drink? Because we want to escape reality. And therefore, if you actually deal with the current reality and change it, literally change your reality into something that you actually truly enjoy, into a life that you are proud to live and that you're happy to live, suddenly the need to escape is actually no longer so strong. And that is quite a powerful thing.
Yeah, no, it is. So, and that's been one of the great things. It's physically, it's been so much. I've really cleaned up a lot because, my body won't do what I need it to do. And I've become more aware of my body now that I'm being more quiet, getting quiet in a yoga class. It helps you connect with yourself. You understand, you feel things that you never felt. Because what we are, in a crude analogy, is we're just this big meat body walking through the universe without any feelings or understanding what's going on. Until you quiet yourself down and get out of your noise of your head and the environment, you don't feel what's happening for yourself. So the feeling, when you start poisoning yourself with alcohol, it doesn't feel good so much anymore. Or it feels worse because you're more aware of it. So that's a big thing. Anyway, I'd love to do some public speaking. So if anyone's out there wants a conference speaker, I'm your man.
You heard it first here. Come on, guys. So, and if you want to get in touch with me down there, look into the description of the podcast or of the video. You will find all his links down there. Now, whilst you're down there, you might as well press the subscribe button because that way you will find more speakers like him. I'm honored and humbled to have some fantastic people coming onto my show, like Greg, who really actually changed my own perception of yoga, in all fairness, reading his book, talking to him now, and seeing that even a BrikMan in this case, can do the pretzels and the downward dog. That is actually quite encouraging. And yes, I looked at yoga. I did actually in rehab. We had a yoga class and I've never heard as much and sweated as much in my life as when this woman put us through the positions. So that all is sort of flooding back to me, and there might just be a risk that I might actually check you out on your website and actually have a look at your introductory course and put my money where my mouth is, so to speak. So no, that's great. Look, Greg, I'm so grateful that you came onto my show. Thank you so much for your time, for your passion, for going out there and being transparent and being this kind of new version of you that is for sure much, much nicer than probably the guy. Would I have met you 20 years ago, 15 years ago? This would have been probably a rather different Greg. And so I'm really pleased that I met the new version of you. It's a really nice version.
Thank you, mate. Look, I'm really grateful that you found my book. And really, really love the opportunity to talk with you and your people, and love what you're doing as well for looking after blokes. We need looking after.
Shit, yeah. Cool. And you guys out there, look after yourself and make right now a decision. What is, when you switch off this talk, what will you do for yourself? Do one thing, a little thing for yourself. Glass of water to rehydrate? Cool. Eat something healthy? Cool. Go for a walk? Even better. Hey, make a call. The past does not equal the future. So make the most out of this whatever time it is in your place when you listen to it, a day, evening, just live it consciously, live it right now and make the most out of it. Look after yourself. Bye.